The stars watched silently as the massive ship from the Galactic Alliance entered Earth's orbit for the first time. Humans had dreamed of this moment for centuries, contact with an advanced alien civilization. But dreams rarely unfold as imagined. Frank Miller adjusted his tie nervously. As Earth's lead diplomat, he carried the weight of humanity on his shoulders. The sleek meeting room aboard the International Space Station had been hastily converted for this historic encounter. "They're docking now, sir," his aide whispered. Frank nodded. "Let's hope they're friendly." The Alliance representatives were a sight to behold. Ambassador Krelvac towered over the humans, his scaled skin shimmering under the station lights. Two other aliens flanked him, a squat, armored being and a willowy creature with 4 arms. "We welcome you to Earth," Frank said, extending his hand in greeting. Krelvac studied the gesture but didn't reciprocate. "Your planet has been monitored for some time," he stated flatly. "The Alliance has determined you are ready for elevation." The discussions lasted hours. The Alliance offered technological wonders beyond human comprehension. Faster than light travel, energy generation systems, medical advances that could eliminate disease. In exchange, they wanted Earth's abundant resources and military service. "Military service?" Frank questioned, leaning forward. "Against whom?" "The galaxy is not safe," Krelvac replied. "All Alliance members contribute to common defense. Your species will learn quickly under our guidance." The UN Security Council convened in an adjacent room. Frank presented the Alliance's terms. "They want immediate deployment of human soldiers," asked Defense Secretary Olivia Johnson. "Before we even understand the threats." "They've made it clear this is non-negotiable," Frank replied. "Though I share your concerns." When Frank raised these issues with the Alliance representatives, their reaction was unexpected. "You hesitate to defend your new allies." Krelvac's voice carried a tone of disgust. "Perhaps we overestimated your species' readiness." "We simply wish to understand what we're facing," Frank explained. "Humans value preparation and careful assessment before committing to conflict." The squat alien barked something in their language that made the others laugh. Krelvac translated. "He says your species is cautious to the point of cowardice." Frank maintained his diplomatic composure. "We prefer to call it prudence." The negotiations continued for weeks. Earth's leaders secured a compromise, a limited initial commitment of military personnel who would primarily observe and learn Alliance combat techniques before full deployment. As Earth celebrated joining the galactic community, few noticed the Alliance intelligence officer named Varric quietly reviewing human history. He studied Earth's wars with particular interest, noting the evolution of human strategy and tactics. "Fascinating," he murmured to himself. "They fight differently than any species we've encountered." In his private report, Varric noted something the Alliance leadership had overlooked. While humans display unusual hesitation to engage in conflict, their tactical analyses demonstrate sophisticated understanding of asymmetric warfare, defensive positioning, and resource preservation. Their apparent caution may be misinterpreted by our combat leaders. The report was filed away, deemed irrelevant. After all, humans were just another primitive species joining the Alliance, useful primarily for their resources and additional fighting bodies. 3 years passed as humans integrated into Alliance society. They learned to operate alien technology, adapted to working alongside dozens of different species, and trained with advanced weapons. All the while, they maintained their cautious approach, earning ridicule from the more aggressive Alliance races. None of them knew that a threat was approaching from deep space, one that would test every Alliance species to their limits, and prove that sometimes caution was the better part of valor. The attack came without warning. The Void Swarm emerged from deep space, a massive collective of biomechanical entities that moved with horrifying coordination. 3 Alliance outposts fell in the first day, 5 more in the second. By the end of the week, the Alliance had lost control of an entire sector. Lisa Carpenter watched the tactical displays with growing concern. As one of Earth's military analysts assigned to Alliance Command, She had a front-row seat to the unfolding disaster. "They're making the same mistake again," she muttered. Her alien supervisor, Commander Draz, glanced over. "Explain." "The Alliance ships are charging in individually, seeking glory, but look how the swarm responds." Lissa pointed to the screen. "They're adapting, encircling, and overwhelming each attacker." Draz's facial tentacles twitched with irritation. "Alliance warriors have conquered galaxies with these tactics. Your human caution is unnecessary." The next day brought news of the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The Alliance had lost its elite battle fleet. Thousands of their finest warriors were dead. Emergency meetings filled the Alliance headquarters. Lisa stood in the back as military leaders argued about how to proceed. "We must strike harder," shouted General Krath, pounding his armored fist on the table. "Gather all available ships for a decisive blow." Lisa exchanged glances with her human colleagues. They all recognized the flawed strategy, but their input was neither sought nor welcomed. Later that night, Lisa joined a secure call with Earth's leadership. "The Alliance is losing this war," she explained. "The swarm operates like a hive mind, adapting instantly to individual attacks. But the Alliance species value personal glory too much to change their approach." President Diane Clark frowned on the screen. "What do you recommend?" "Humans understand concepts the Alliance has never needed. Coordinated retreats, defensive formations, trap setting. We could help, but they'd have to listen to us." Admiral Jack Wilson spoke up. "They won't. They still call us cowards for suggesting basic defensive strategies." "Then maybe we act on our own," President Clark said. "How much of our fleet could we quietly prepare?" Back on Earth, the debate raged through government halls. "It's suicide," Defense Secretary Johnson argued. "Our ships are barely up to Alliance standards. We'd be throwing lives away." Admiral Wilson disagreed. "We don't need to match their firepower. We need to fight smarter." Lisa's analysis shows the swarm has patterns, weaknesses we can exploit. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Earth would send a volunteer fleet, small by Alliance standards, but staffed with their best tactical minds. Lisa helped brief the commanders. "The Alliance won't welcome our help at first. They'll see it as interference, maybe even cowardice in action. But when their approach fails again..." Commander Susan Grant, the fleet's leader, nodded grimly. "Then we'll show them another way." As Earth's ships prepared to depart, Alliance officials barely noticed. They were too busy planning their next glorious offensive. Varric, the Alliance intelligence officer who had studied humans years before, watched the Earth fleet's preparations with interest. He approached Lisa as she was reviewing final tactical plans. "Your ships are moving into position near the Rigel system," he noted. "That's not where the Alliance is gathering its forces." Lisa measured her words carefully. "We're establishing a fallback position, a retreat point before the battle begins." Varric's eyes narrowed. "How very human." "Call it what you want," Lisa replied. "But when the Alliance charge fails, as it will, someone needs to be ready with a different approach." Varric studied her for a long moment. "I've watched your species. You confuse the others with your reluctance to rush into glory. But perhaps..." He didn't finish the thought, simply nodding once before walking away. 3 days later, the swarm descended upon the Alliance's hastily assembled forces. The battle was over in hours, and as survivors limped away from the catastrophe, they found themselves heading toward the waiting human fleet. Commander Susan Grant stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Guardian, watching as damaged Alliance vessels limped into the defensive perimeter her fleet had established. The human ships were arranged in a careful formation, smaller vessels positioned to support larger ones, overlapping fields of fire, and clear escape vectors established. "Another group approaching, Commander," reported Lieutenant Ryan Garcia. 6 ships, heavily damaged." Susan nodded. "Guide them to Sector 4. Have medical teams standing by." The communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission from the Alliance command ship." General Zax's face appeared on screen, his reptilian features contorted with fury. What is this formation? Why are your ships not preparing to engage the enemy? Susan kept her voice calm. General, we've established a defensive position to regroup and assess the swarm's approach. Our analysis suggests. Analysis? Zax cut her off. While you hide behind your screens, the enemy advances. The Alliance does not retreat, we attack. With respect, General, that approach has cost thousands of lives already. We're suggesting a different strategy. Zax's eyes narrowed. The humans wished to teach warfare to species who were conquering stars, while your ancestors still lived in caves. He laughed bitterly. Your caution will be your downfall. After the transmission ended, Susan addressed her officers. They're not ready to listen yet. Maintain positions and continue preparing for swarm contact. Over the next 12 hours, Susan's team briefed Alliance survivors on the human battle plan. Many scoffed at concepts like defensive formations and coordinated withdrawals. War, they insisted, was about courage and individual prowess. The swarm is approaching, announced the sensor officer. Multiple vectors, classic envelopment pattern. Susan activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, battle stations, remember your training. No individual heroics. Trust your squadron leaders. She watched as several Alliance ships broke formation immediately, charging toward the approaching enemy. Their commanders ignored urgent calls to return to position. Let them go, Susan ordered grimly. We can't force them to follow our plan. The renegade Alliance ships engaged the swarm's forward elements. For a brief moment, they appeared to be successful, destroying several enemy vessels. Then the swarm adapted, encircling the attackers and overwhelming them with coordinated fire. Now they'll see, Susan whispered. As the main swarm force approached, Susan's fleet executed their carefully rehearsed maneuvers. When swarm vessels attempted to flank them, human ships moved in pairs, covering each other's vulnerable points. When enemy numbers became overwhelming in one sector, those ships performed a controlled withdrawal, while others provided covering fire. The Raven is taking heavy damage, called out Garcia. Their shields are failing. Phoenix Squadron, provide support, Susan ordered. Blue Team, prepare extraction pattern Delta. The human ships moved with practiced precision, extracting their damaged ally while maintaining defensive integrity. Alliance observers watched in confusion as the humans repeatedly refused opportunities to pursue damaged swarm vessels. 3 hours into the battle, the swarm's adaptive tactics began to falter against the disciplined human defense. They were programmed to exploit aggressive, individualistic enemies, not this coordinated, patient opponent. They're pulling back, reported the sensor officer, regrouping at coordinates Mark 7. Susan nodded. As expected, maintain positions. This is just their first test of our defenses. General Zax's ship had taken heavy damage early in the battle when he'd ignored human warnings about a swarm trap. Now he watched in stunned silence as human vessels retrieved Alliance survivors, methodically and efficiently. Your people fight. Strangely, he finally said to the human liaison officer on his bridge. We fight to win, General, she replied. Not for glory. As the swarm prepared for another assault, Susan gathered her commanders for a quick briefing. They'll adapt their approach, but so will we. Remember, our goal isn't to destroy them all. It's to protect our forces while inflicting sustainable damage. The Alliance officers present exchanged glances. This concept of warfare, prioritizing survival over kill counts, was alien to them. Yet they couldn't deny its effectiveness. When the swarm attacked again, several Alliance ships chose to remain in the human formation rather than charge out alone. It was a small victory, but Susan knew it was just the beginning. The Grand Council chamber of the Alliance headquarters fell silent as Captain Alan Morris entered. He was the 5th human summoned in the 3 days since the battle. Unlike the ornate armor or ceremonial robes worn by Alliance officials, Alan wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's Space Command. He carried only a small data tablet. High Chancellor Vexcor, leader of the Alliance's governing body, studied Alan with 8 golden eyes. Captain Morris, you are the tactical analyst who predicted the swarm's attack patterns. One of several, Chancellor, Alan replied, his voice steady despite his nerves. We worked as a team. The chamber filled with murmurs. The concept of shared credit was as foreign to many Alliance species as the human battle tactics had been. Explain how you anticipated the enemy's movements, demanded General Krath, still bearing wounds from the battle. Are humans secret allies with the swarm? Alan remained calm. No, General. We simply observe their behavior over multiple engagements and identify patterns. He activated his tablet, projecting a holographic display of swarm formations. The swarm operates like a single organism with distributed elements. They don't think like individuals. What does this matter? Asked a hulking warrior from the front row. They are enemies to be destroyed, not studied. Ellen tapped his display, advancing to a new image. By analyzing their reaction times and communication methods, we discovered this. The hologram showed a complex network connecting swarm vessels. They're networked, like a neural system. Damage one area, and others compensate, but target specific nodes. For the next hour, Alan explained the human analysis. He showed how swarm vessels communicated, how they prioritized targets, and most importantly, why Alliance tactics had failed so dramatically. Your warriors are brave, Alan concluded, but the swarm uses that bravery against you. They lure individual ships into traps, sacrificing their own vessels to destroy yours. Chancellor Vexcor leaned forward. And your defensive formations prevent this. They reduce casualties significantly. The swarm struggles against coordinated groups that prioritize mutual protection over individual kills. General Zax, who had witnessed the human tactics firsthand, spoke reluctantly. Their methods preserve ships that would have been lost under our approach. The chamber erupted in argument. Many council members considered defensive fighting dishonorable. Others were intrigued by the human strategy's effectiveness. The debate raged until Chancellor Vexcor raised a hand for silence. Captain Morris, what does Earth propose? Alan took a deep breath. A coordinated defense across multiple systems, using our understanding of swarm behavior to predict and counter their movements. We establish strong points they cannot easily overcome, forcing them to adapt to us rather than the reverse. And how long before we destroy them completely? Demanded a member from a warrior species. That's not our immediate goal, Alan explained carefully. First, we stop their advance, protect civilian worlds, stabilize the front. Then we identify vulnerabilities for a potential counteroffensive. The chamber filled with outraged cries. Patience is cowardice. You would have us hide while worlds burn. This is why humans should never lead warriors. Chancellor Vexcor silenced them again. Captain, your species has been in space for barely a generation. The Alliance has fought wars for millennia. Why should we adopt human methods? Elen looked directly at the Chancellor. Because they work against this enemy. Your traditional approaches don't. The brutal honesty silenced the room. Show us, said a voice from the back. It was Varric, the intelligence officer who had studied humans years before. Show us these predictions in action. Prove their worth. The Chancellor considered this. A test, then. Captain Morris, your people will be granted authority to implement defensive measures in the Arcturus system. If you succeed, we will consider broader implementation. As Alan left the chamber, General Zax approached him. My warriors died charging into battle as they have for generations. You ask us to change everything we believe about warfare. Alan nodded. Yes, General, because sometimes survival requires adaptation. Zax's expression was unreadable. We will watch closely, human. Prove your words with actions. Alan returned to Earth's command center where Lisa Carpenter and Commander Grant were waiting anxiously. They'd given us Arcturus, he reported. one system to demonstrate our approach. Lisa's expression was grim. Arcturus is directly in the swarm's path. If we fail there, then we all fall together. Susan Grant finished quietly. Let's make sure we don't. Susan Grant surveyed the bustling command center on Arcturus Station with quiet satisfaction. In just 2 weeks, her team had transformed a chaotic outpost into an organized defensive hub. The large holographic display at the center showed hundreds of ships arranged in precise formations throughout the system. Status report, she called to her officers. Major Ben Harris approached with a datapad. All human vessels are in position. Alliance ships are at 80% compliance with formation orders. Susan nodded. Better than yesterday. The door slid open as Lieutenant Krell entered. The towering alien had initially been one of their strongest critics, but now he observed human operations with growing interest. Your drills continue to confuse my warriors, Krell stated. They ask why we practice retreating before the enemy has even arrived. Not retreating, Susan corrected patiently. Repositioning. Every ship needs to know exactly where to go when conditions change. Krell's facial ridges twitched. In my culture, a warrior who steps backward forfeits honor. In our culture, Susan replied, a commander who loses ships needlessly forfeits trust. She gestured to the display. Would you join today's command simulation? See our approach from the inside. After a moment's hesitation, Krell agreed. The simulation center recreated battle conditions with startling realism. Susan assigned Krell to oversee a squadron of mixed human and alliance vessels. As the simulated swarm attacked, Susan watched Krell struggle with human orders to maintain formation when targets presented themselves. Your instinct to pursue is natural, Susan explained afterward. But against the swarm, isolation means death. Over the next days, more Alliance officers participated in human training exercises. Some remained dismissive, but others began to recognize the effectiveness of Earth's methodical approach. The alarm finally sounded on the 7th day. Swarm vessels detected at the system's edge, announced the sensor officer. Numbers consistent with predictions. Susan activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, battle stations. Execute Defense Plan Echo. This is not a drill. The human ships moved with practiced precision. Alliance vessels followed with varying degrees of confidence. Susan noticed Lieutenant Krell's squadron maintaining perfect formation and allowed herself a small smile. The first wave of swarm attackers encountered a disciplined defense unlike anything they had faced before. When they attempted to lure ships into pursuit, none took the bait. When they concentrated fire on a single target, nearby vessels provided cover while the threatened ship withdrew to safety. Hours passed. The swarm adapted, trying different approaches, but the human-led defense adjusted each time. In the command center, Alliance observers watched with growing amazement. They're pulling back, reported the sensor officer. Swarm forces are retreating to regroup. A cheer rose from the human staff, but Susan quieted them quickly. They'll return with a new approach. Maintain readiness. Damage reports. 3 ships lost, 11 damaged but operational, Harris reported. Estimated swarm losses at 22 vessels. An Alliance commander spoke up. Only 3 ships. The last engagement in this sector cost us 17 vessels for similar enemy losses. That's the difference, Susan explained. We're not trading ship for ship. We're preserving our strength. When the swarm returned 6 hours later, they faced the same disciplined defense, though with new formations designed to counter their adapted tactics. Again, they withdrew after inflicting minimal damage. After the 3rd failed assault, the remaining swarm forces departed the system entirely. The command center erupted in celebration. Susan allowed it this time, watching as humans and aliens congratulated each other. Lieutenant Krell approached her, his usual stern expression softened. My squadron suffered no losses, he said. This has never happened in battle against the swarm. Susan nodded. That was the goal. My people have always measured victory by the enemy ships we destroy. Krell continued. But your methods. He seemed to struggle for words. You measured victory by the allies we preserved. Across the room, Major Harris was coordinating with Alliance officers, showing them data from the battle. Look at these patterns, he explained. The swarm tried to adapt, but their adaptations became predictable. We can use this in other systems. Susan watched this exchange with hope. The battle for Arcturus had been won, but perhaps something more important had been gained. Alliance understanding of the human approach. Her communication device beeped. It was a message from Alliance High Command. Defensive strategy successful. Report to Central Command for expanded implementation. Susan smiled. This was just the beginning. The Grand Strategy Room at Alliance Headquarters was filled beyond capacity. 3 weeks had passed since the successful defense of Arcturus, and Earth's approach had gained reluctant respect. Now, all eyes focused on Captain Alan Morris as he revealed the next phase of the human plan. Defense alone will not win this war, Alan began, standing before the massive tactical display. We must move to a counteroffensive. General Zax grunted. Finally, the humans speak of attack rather than retreat. Alan nodded respectfully to the general. But not the kind of attack you might expect. He activated the display, showing a complex web of connections. These are swarm communication pathways our analysis has identified. This is what we target, not their main forces. The display zoomed in on key nodes in the network. Alliance commanders leaned forward, studying the unfamiliar approach. You wish to attack their communication rather than their ships? Asked Admiral Thorne, his crystalline features reflecting the light. Where is the glory in that? There's no glory in defeat either, replied Alan. The swarm functions as a unified organism. Disrupt its neural network, and individual units become vulnerable. Engineer Nicole Watson stepped forward, her work uniform plain compared to the ornate military dress surrounding her. We've developed modifications for Alliance weapon systems, she explained, bringing up technical schematics. These adjustments will allow your ships to generate frequency patterns that disrupt swarm communication. Human technology modifying Alliance weapons. The outrage in General Kraft's voice was clear. Our designs are perfected over millennia. Nicole remained calm. The modifications are temporary and non-invasive. They simply add capabilities your systems weren't designed to need before. Chancellor Vexcor raised a hand for silence. Explain the complete strategy, Captain Morris. Ellen outlined the plan step by step. It would require coordinated actions across multiple star systems. Some ships would engage in what he called strategic distraction, while others targeted communication nodes. Success depended on precise timing and disciplined adherence to the plan. This will require patience, Alan concluded. Results won't be immediate. We're dismantling their network systematically, not seeking a single decisive battle. The room erupted in debate. Many Alliance commanders couldn't comprehend waiting weeks for victory when they could charge into glorious battle immediately. Others, including those who had witnessed the Arcturus defense, were more receptive. A demonstration, suggested Varric, the intelligence officer who had become an unexpected ally to the humans. One operation to prove the concept. Chancellor Vexcor considered this. Agreed. A limited operation under human direction. Admiral Grant was selected to lead the demonstration mission. She chose a small fleet with a mix of human ships and Alliance vessels, commanded by those who had embraced the new tactics. Their target was a minor swarm communication hub in the Deneb system. According to human analysis, disrupting this node would affect swarm coordination across 3 nearby systems. The mission launched without fanfare, while major Alliance forces continued conventional battles elsewhere. Drawing swarm attention, Grant's fleet approached their target using indirect routes that human analysis had identified as blind spots in swarm sensor coverage. 3 days later, they struck. The attack was precise and methodical. Ships moved in coordinated patterns that confused swarm defenders. When the swarm adapted, Grant's forces shifted to predetermined contingency formations. Nichols' modified weapons performed exactly as designed, bombarding the communication hub with targeted energy patterns rather than simply trying to destroy it physically. Hub disruption confirmed, reported Lieutenant Garcia on the bridge of the flagship. Swarm vessels in sectors 7 through 9 showing coordination failure. Grant watched as enemy ships began moving erratically, their synchronized patterns breaking down. Without central coordination, individual vessels reverted to basic programming. All ships, execute Phase 2, Grant ordered. The fleet split into precisely arranged battle groups, systematically neutralizing the now disorganized swarm vessels. It wasn't the overwhelming victory Alliance commanders typically sought, but it was methodical and efficient. When Grant's fleet returned to headquarters, they'd brought compelling data. In the 3 affected systems, Alliance forces reported swarm vessels operating with reduced effectiveness, making them vulnerable to conventional tactics. 6 months after implementing the human counter-strategy, a massive fleet gathered at the edge of the Perseus Arm. Operation Checkmate was about to begin, the largest coordinated military action in Alliance history. Admiral Susan Grant stood on the bridge of the flagship Defender, surveying the tactical display showing hundreds of vessels arranged in precise formations. What had once been ridiculed as human caution had transformed into the Alliance's new doctrine. "All command ships report ready, Admiral," announced Major Harris. Susan nodded. "Begin final countdown. Remind all commanders to follow their assigned protocols exactly." The operation had been meticulously planned using months of data on swarm behavior patterns. Each fleet had specific objectives, timed to create a cascading effect across swarm territory. Lieutenant Krell, now a dedicated convert to human tactics, commanded his own battle group. "My warriors understand their role," he reported. "No glory-seeking, no individual pursuits." Susan smiled briefly. "That's still the hardest part for many of them." The operation began with a series of feints, smaller fleets engaging swarm forces at carefully selected points, then executing controlled withdrawals. As predicted, the swarm committed significant resources to pursue these apparent opportunities. Phase 1 complete, Harris reported. Swarm forces redistributing exactly as projected. The main Alliance armada split into precisely timed attack groups, targeting key communication nodes throughout swarm-controlled space. Nicol Watson's disruption technology had been refined and expanded, now capable of severing swarm neural connections across entire sectors. On the command deck of Alliance headquarters, Chancellor Vexcor and the military high command watched the operation unfold through real-time updates. "The humans' plan appears to be working," observed General Zax, who had once been their harshest critic. "The swarm fragments grow increasingly isolated from each other." Varric nodded. "Their individual units lack the tactical flexibility to operate independently. Without central coordination, they fall back to basic programming." As the battle progressed, Alliance commanders faced their greatest test. Swarm vessels began to present what appeared to be perfect targets. Isolated ships, vulnerable positions, opportunities for quick victories. In previous campaigns, Alliance warriors would have broken formation to pursue these prizes. Now they held position, recognizing the baits for what they were. Squadron 7 reports swarm vessels appearing to retreat in disarray, reported an officer at Alliance headquarters. "And Squadron 7 is maintaining formation rather than pursuing," noted Varric with satisfaction. 6 months ago, they would have charged after them. For 3 days, the battle raged across multiple systems. The Alliance suffered losses, but nothing like the devastating casualties of earlier engagements. Step by step, the massive swarm collective was divided into isolated pockets that could be systematically neutralized. On the 4th day, Susan Grant received the confirmation she had been waiting for. "Swarm central coordination has collapsed," reported the analysis officer. "Remaining vessels are operating independently or in small clusters." A cheer rose through the command center. "All fleets, execute final containment protocols," Susan ordered. "Remember, thoroughness over speed. Don't give them a chance to reestablish links." Over the next week, Alliance forces methodically eliminated the fractured sworn remnants. It wasn't the glorious, decisive battle many had initially wanted, but the results were undeniable. 1 month later, Susan stood in the Grand Chamber of the Alliance Council as Chancellor Vexcor addressed the assembled representatives. "Today we officially declare the swarm threat neutralized," the Chancellor announced. "This victory was achieved through methods that challenged our traditional understanding of warfare. Methods introduced by our human allies." Susan felt a surge of pride as the Chancellor continued. "What we once mistook for cowardice, we now recognize as prudence. What we dismissed as hesitation, we understand was careful planning. The humans' approach to conflict, their emphasis on preservation of force, their patience, their willingness to withdraw strategically, these have proven more effective than our traditional focus on individual glory and direct confrontation." The Chancellor raised all 8 of his arms in a formal gesture. "Therefore, the Council establishes a new Galactic Defense Academy, where officers from all worlds will learn these principles. Earth will provide the core instruction staff.